Okay, in this brief video we're going to take a look at a couple of questions. What if we hold an asset for 5 years? What if we hold it for an additional 5 years? So the question is, do we sell it after 5 or do we go ahead and hold it for the next 5? And finally we're going to wrap it up by looking at what happens if we hold it one additional year, and we're going to look at 1 year at a time. So let's first jump into the assumptions that drive this spreadsheet. This is similar to things that we've seen before, where you have everything driven by these assumptions. I've got them in blue over here, this kind of blue shaded input. So we've got a multifamily property, 60 units, 61 bedroom, 1 bath, 42 bedroom, 1 bath, 82 bedroom, 2, 63 bedroom, 2. Here's the monthly rents. And then here's the potential rent for a monthly basis. So it's just a product of those, the number of units times the monthly rent. This is the monthly gross potential rent, so to speak, 212,000. If you look over here at the first year, I need to multiply 12 times that monthly rent to get an annual number. And so that's what's going on right here. This is driving the top line. Gross potential rent is coming from these inputs over here. My expenses are given here, and this is a very simplistic model where I've got 105,000 per month fixed, and then I'm going to have $200 per occupied unit per month. So that's a variable portion that goes up and down based on occupancy. Inflation rate is 2.5%. This is what the cash flows are going to grow at, both revenues and expenses. And then we got an exit cap assumption of 8%. Finally, we got some loan information in the purchase price. $6,875,000 is the purchase, 80% loan to value. Loan amount is a calculation. So 80% of $6,875,000 means a $5.5 million loan. Interest rate is 6.5%. It's a 20-year amortization. Here's another calculation. That means my monthly payment is $41,000. And if we look over here at the debt service payments, this is an annual number, 12 times that annual loan payment. So these are the assumptions that drive the spreadsheet. And let's get into the heart of the spreadsheet. We've got a time indicator up here. Those are the years of the pro forma. This is an important row, and you notice I also have it kind of formatted as inputs. These are all inputs that are driving results. So this is the occupancy assumptions, and I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And you can see I'm starting off at 88%, gradually rising up all the way to 95%. So the last several years of this pro forma are all basically stabilized at 95%. We're buying it initially at 88%, so the assumption is, or the thought is, that this is a bit below market, or it's in a market, but a market that's going to be recovering over the next several years. So again, you can see this climbing. Let's see if I can do that little spark line. Insert a spark line right here, and you can just, this is a picture of what occupancy is doing over time. It's obviously not going from 0 to 95, but this shows the trend. It's a pretty rapid increase, and then it flattens out over time. Let's get into the pro forma here then. We've already talked about gross potential rent. The vacancy allowance is just going to take into account how much space we have occupied, or I guess on the flip side, how much is vacant. So either way, we're taking out the units that aren't generating rent, and that leaves us with gross income, the sum of the gross potential, take away the empty units, the money we're not getting on that, and we're left with a gross income of $2 million in this first year. This, by the way, is not growing at 2.5%. These numbers are. Actually, sorry, this number is. This number is a function of the input given here with occupancy. So it has nothing to do with the inflation, only in kind of a follow-on manner, because this is tied to inflation. This is indirectly tied to it. Don't worry too much about the inflation, except for this line, the revenues, and then these lines, the expenses are also changing by that inflation rate of 2.5%. So gross income is marching up over time because occupancy is marching up over time. The fixed expenses, I already told you that, $105,000 per month. We multiply it times 12. It's going to grow at 2.5% per year. The variable expenses are tied to the number of units, the occupancy, and then I have this running number up here in the top column, which is basically the variable expenses per occupied unit per month, and you can see that those are growing at the 2.5% inflation rate. So our variable expenses are going up 2.5% per unit, but they're also going up because our occupancy is increasing over time. So our total expenses, just the sum of the fixed and the variable. NOI is going to be the difference between the gross income and the total expenses. So this is all very straightforward, very matter-of-fact kind of stuff, nothing special here. Debt service we've done before, and then here's a ratio that we've looked at in the past, the debt service coverage ratio, where I take a look at the net income divided by how much we're paying out in debt service. Anything above 1 means that we have enough money to pay for our debt service from the operations of the property. In this case, we got something below, and you can see that we're making $470 from the property. Our debt service is $490. That means we're kind of upside down. So it's obviously better to have above 1. In general, we'd like to have above 1.25. The banks usually want that. So in this case, we talked about this a few weeks back. The bank, somehow we snuck our way into a loan where the debt service coverage ratio wasn't 120 or 125 or better coming in. We're getting there over time, but we're not there initially. Regardless, we're going to stick with these assumptions, and let's just keep going here and see what we got. So we've got the operations in this top area up here. Now in this kind of middle section, we've got disposition information. And first thing we got is the purchase price and our initial loan amount and our upfront cash flow. So this is, if we're looking at a 5-year hold, and that's the first thing we're going to do here, we need these cash flows in the next 5 years. So the NOI and the debt service are just linking up above to the operations section. We've got years 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in year 5, the assumption initially is that we're going to sell this thing. So the question is, what is this thing going to be worth in 5 years? And so I just look at year 6 in NOI right here. I divide it by 8%, and that's the value. So $8,343,000. My loan payoff, I use the future value function. I figure out what the loan is going to pay off over 5 years, and you can see I've got the rate 6.5%. I've put 60 periods as the number of periods. My payment is linked to this cell B24 over there, the $41,000 per month, and then my initial present value is B21, $5.5 million. So all the necessary inputs are there, and I'm selling it for $8,043,000. I got a loan payoff of $4,007,000. If I add all that stuff together, my very last cash flow for the first 5 years, the last cash flow in year 5 is $3,794,000, the sum of the disposition and the operations. For years 1, 2, 3, and 4, I just have the operating activity. For the 5-year hold, I look at these 6 cash flows, these 5 years, and I can look at the IRR there. I've got a 24.4. And my NPV, just for giggles, I looked at what the NPV would be with a discount rate of 18.5%, and that's $368,000. So if my cutoff, my benchmark return or my baseline return is 18.5, this would be a good deal, a good property to buy. Certainly for 5 years, it's beat my my return requirements of 18.5%. I'm going to stop here and pick up the rest of this in a second video so we can keep these each under 10 minutes.